Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. If you are paying attention, you know that soccer fever is everywhere. It's at an all-time high. Even before we knew the World Cup would be coming to our area in 2026, soccer has seen a surge in popularity in the U.S. and, of course, right here in New Jersey. Joe Stetson is the Chief Commercial Officer for the New York Red Bulls, which call Harrison, New Jersey home, of course. Thank you so much for being here, Joe.
Thanks for having me, Ivy. I'm thrilled to be here.
Joe, I'm going to start by congratulating you because recently you guys announced that where the Red Bulls play is now called Sports Illustrated Stadium. And I didn't realize that that was the first time in Sports Illustrated history, in their 70-year history, that they did a naming rights deal. It's got to be so cool.
I mean, it's cool that such a iconic brand like Sports Illustrated wanted to associate themselves with not only us but with the venue that we play in. For me, it was such a big deal because I grew up reading Sports Illustrated every week, fighting with my brothers every Thursday to be the first one to get the issue, and we would always post the covers on our wall. So it was a nice full circle moment for me.
What does that mean to not just for the team, but really for the area that something like that happens? It's such a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've been in Harrison, New Jersey. We've been calling what was Red Bull Arena home for almost 15 years. And, we're owned by Red Bull. It's the name of the team. It's the name on the jersey. It was the name on our building. For us, it was really important to find the right brand, that if we were going to take the Red Bull name off of it, it had to be the right brand. And it couldn't just be any sponsor. It had to be something special. And here we were able to work something out with an iconic brand like Sports Illustrated, work with their ticketing brand, SI Tickets, as a big part of this. Work with them as our new ticketing partner that will start in 2026. Really work with fan experience opportunities there as well too. But what this brand brings to it versus some other naming rights partners that I might have worked with in the past, which are all great in their own right, this just adds another element to the fan experience when you're associated with what has been for 70 years, really, the top brand in sports from a media and journalist standpoint. Like I mentioned, I had pictures of the cover on my wall. So to have that association with our building, I thought was really something special for us.
Yeah. So you talked about growing up with pictures, but where was that? You grew up in New Jersey, right? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in Angle Cliffs in Bergen County, right outside the George Washington Bridge.
Did you play soccer when you were little?
I played soccer growing up.
Okay.
Soccer was one of the sports that I played, as a youngster. But then in high school, I switched over to football and then really got back into soccer when I started working for the Red Bulls about 11 years ago. And now I'm obsessed.
So I we talk a lot about just how beneficial sports are for kids growing up and the lessons that they learn. And I know that now in a lot of the work that you do specifically with the Red Bulls, it's part of the the youth soccer programs that you have. But what do you think being a young athlete taught you and helped set you up for the life that you have now, for this job that you do now, the work that you do?
There's so many valuable lessons you can learn just from playing sport. You learn teamwork, you learn resiliency, you learn how to be selfless. There's so many other values to the game, any game really, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, soccer, wrestling, as I'm finding both my kids are getting into wrestling now. There's so many values in sport that really help you, socially, when you're young, and then leadership qualities in business. Like there's so many things that I've learned through sport that have helped me in my career.
Was there a time when you thought you might want to be a professional athlete?
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think like many kids, like that was my dream. My dream was to be a professional football player. And I came to a realization pretty early on that that wasn't going to happen, despite the fact that I thought I was pretty good. And then for me, it was like, all right, well, I know I'm very passionate about sports. And so what else can I do, to
Hmm.
continue to, be involved in sports even past my playing days? And that's where I found the business of sport to be really, really exciting.
So it allows you to stay in sports, but I imagine it's much easier on your knees as we get older,
Yes.
right? So,
Yeah. Two knee surgeries.
um,
I tore my ACL, so yeah, I know. This is much easier on my knees. Probably, not as easy on my heart, but or stress level, but definitely easier on the knees. And I still get a chance to appreciate and be a part of so much that sports provides.
mm,
What I do tell a lot of folks, though, too, especially young professionals that are trying to get into sports as a business, like it is a business though too, and
yeah.
there's a lot that comes with it. It is a job, and so everything that folks do to um, be a part of this industry because of their passion for it. Many of them realize, like, oh wow, like maybe that's not for me. Because what I
Mm,
found early on too is, as much of a fan of sports that I am, um, it's actually tough to maintain that fanhood and fandom, as you're working in it, 7 days a week. So trying to find that balance where I'm actually still loving going to games, still love watching sports on TV, but also being a part of it, as a job as well too.
so how do you find the balance? I mean, when you're at home, do you still watch, or are you kind of
I do.
yeah.
I do. But it's so interesting that for me, growing up, favorite thing for me to do was to go to a sporting event with my dad.
Mm,
He got Giant season tickets when I was 5 years old, and it was at first it was two tickets. He would take either me or my older brother at the time. Then he got four tickets, and we all went together. And it was the highlight of my week. And then he would take us to baseball games or what have you. So that was always my favorite thing, and that's what really drew me to sports. Now, now I've been working in sports for decades now. Sometimes if I don't have a match or a game, on a Saturday or a Sunday, last thing I want to do is to go to a game, and I might pass up the opportunity to go to a Mets game or a Giants game, just to be able to sit at home and watch the game on TV or hang out with my kids.
yeah, yeah. Um, so you talked about how you got into this industry. I'm a Rutgers girl, so I have to mention you went to
Oh
Rutgers
yeah,
too.
how are you? All
Are you?
right.
So what? You had an internship. Like, take me through the beginning of that story, because from what I
Yeah.
understand, it was an internship that you had while you were in school that really set this off for you.
Yeah, it was interesting. And to talk about kind of the values of sports growing up, though, too, it also kept a network of people growing up. Interestingly enough, when I was at Rutgers, I was driving down, I don't know, it might have been like Hamilton Avenue, whatever it was.
Sure.
I was walking down there and I ran into somebody that was a couple years older than me that was at Rutgers, who I played Little League with in Englewood Cliffs. His name was Brian, and he said, I just finished my internship at Madison Square Garden. I'm about to graduate now. I'm like, that's cool. Like, what's an internship? Like, this is the
Right.
'90s, like where like internships weren't as common. I'm dating myself, but so he
I'm in the same
explained to
boat. I'm
me,
in the
like,
same boat. So you're okay.
right,
Please date away. Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
So I was a sophomore at the time, and he just started telling me about, like, oh, I go to, work at Madison Square Garden, and I help them out. And I'm like, all right, I need to do that. So applied for an internship, really just hassled the HR person until I got one. But yeah, so I started interning there as a sophomore. And I interned in their television network, with MSG Network, which was great because
Hmm.
they had pretty much every team in the market at the time. This was before Yes and SNY. And I was in the programming department. I had no idea what programming was, but I just knew I wanted to be in the building. And that internship ended, and I said, like, I don't want to leave. Can I do another internship? They're like, sure. Did another internship. That one ended. I said, I want to do something else. I basically just kept raising my hand until they gave me odd jobs, from production work. I was a production assistant. I was a logger for their show Sports Desk, which was like their highlight show. It was their version of sports, as like a local version of Sports Center. And basically, my last 2.5 years at Rutgers were primarily focused on how often I was going to Madison Square Garden. So there was an instance where I was living in New Brunswick. I was on the first train from New Brunswick to Penn Station, which is right, below Madison
Yeah.
Square Garden. Did an internship with the PR department. Went back to Rutgers. Did afternoon classes. Went back to Madison Square Garden on another train. Worked their television show that night, and then took the last train. So I was on the first train to New York and on the last train from New York to New Brunswick every day for, I don't know, 5, 6 days a week. I knew that, and I definitely sacrificed a lot while I was at Rutgers. My grades probably took a hit. Um, Social life, I tried to stay balanced the best of it that I could, but my priority was I knew I wanted to work in sports. I knew I wanted to work in Madison Square Garden, and I was determined that I was going to get as much experience as exposure as possible. And that was only meant like if they needed somebody to do an odd job, I was going to do it, even if it was in an area that I knew nothing about and really didn't wasn't capable of doing. I was going to try it anyway. And sure enough, by the time I was about to graduate, a job opened up in marketing, which was always my interest at the time. And I went to the hiring manager and I said, I'd like to apply for the job. And she said to me, her name was Debbie. She said, Joe, we've known you for 2.5 years. You don't have to apply. The job is yours. So I had a job waiting for me when I was graduating, which was great. And I ended up working there for about another 10 years. That's where I met Sammy.
Which is amazing because, MSG is like the working there when you're in school and then even right after, that's like getting a master's in sports, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the dream for so many people to get to MSG, and that's where you were able to start. So you must have some incredible stories of people that you met and just moments that stand out to you.
I grew up there. I mean, I started there when I was 19, and I was able to, towards the end of my time there, I was the director of marketing, and I was able to do an MBA program at NYU. I was able to get my executive MBA while I was there too. But to your point, I mean, I learned so much there. I met so many great people that had such an impact on the next stages of my career. So each of my jobs from there on out actually came from somebody that I met at Madison Square Garden during my time there. So from there, I went to the Nets, where the chief revenue officer at the Nets used to head up sales at Madison Square Garden. His name was Neil Davis. He pretty much brought me over to the Nets. From the Nets, I went to Van Wagner to follow this gentleman, Scott Epstein, who was with me at Madison Square Garden as well. And then from there, I went to Red Bull based on a connection that was made through our media buying agency that we use at Madison Square Garden. So for me, not only did I grow up there, and to your point, it was like a master's, in life and in business and everything, but it was such a great start to my career. And
Mm.
I sometimes look back and I don't think I realized what a great opportunity it was. But for me, it was just taking advantage of every opportunity that I had there.
Well, and you glossed over some major things there, but when you were at the Nets, you were one of the guys responsible for moving the Nets to Brooklyn and really launching the Barclays Center.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great opportunity. So going back to what I was telling you about, balancing being a fan and the business of sports, when I was finishing up my MBA, I was it was a program that it was at NYU, and I was the only one that was in the sports industry. And I was so impressed by everybody else in my program that worked in all these different industries. And I basically told myself, I'm like, you know what, when I'm done here, I'm going to find a job. I'm going to get out of sports and I'm going to become just a sports fan. And I'm going to start to enjoy going to games again. And I'm going to work outside of sports. Well, sure enough, this gentleman, Neil, reached out to me and he told me that, the Nets were planning on moving to Brooklyn. They just sold their naming rights sponsorship for this new building that they're going to build in Brooklyn
Mm.
to Barclays Bank. And the requirement there is that they wanted a marketing person to oversee the new branding and the new branding of this Barclays Center, and kind of help shepherd the Nets move into Brooklyn. And I'm like, well, it's kind of sports adjacent because I'd be more working on the other side of it, the entertainment side of it. I said, but the job was too good to pass up. So of course I went ahead with
Yeah.
it. And for 2.5 years, I was responsible for really launching the Barclays Center brand, trying to establish kind of what the Barclays Center was. So we created the sales center, which established the new suites and what the sponsorship offerings and what the design was going to look like. And it was real. I mean, it was a dream job. It was an
Yeah.
amazing opportunity. And then during that time, I had an opportunity to work more on the net side of the business as well too, and really help with the rebrand of the Nets from New Jersey to Brooklyn. I left before they moved to Brooklyn
Okay.
and was there during some very challenging years where the team wasn't playing so well. And everybody in New Jersey hated us because we were leaving, but everybody in Brooklyn also hated us because they thought we were ruining their neighborhood. Now that's all changed, but yeah, so it was a great experience.
You've done so many great things. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the stuff that's happening now with the Red Bulls and soccer and all that good stuff. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. More Big Little Stories coming up. Welcome back to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmitz. We're talking with Joe Stetson, who is the Chief Commercial Officer at the New York Red Bulls. Joe, how would you describe the sports ecosystem in New Jersey? I feel like we are really an amazing place for sports.
Yeah, I mean this whole metro area. I mean, because in New Jersey, you also have to think about the New York teams as well too. And there's you know 13 professional sports franchises in just this market alone. Then you have our alma mater, Rutgers, which is making a name for itself as well too in football and basketball and other sports. You got Seton Hall. Yeah, to your point, the ecosystem here, I mean, it's really rich with tradition and history. And then for us, as a team that is part of MLS, Major League Soccer, that started in 1996. It's going on its 30th season. It's still somewhat of a new
Yeah,
offering,
yeah,
right? I've been with the New York Red Bulls now for 11 years, and you touched on it in the beginning, like the sport of soccer is growing so fast. A lot of it has to do with the fact that just youth participation is growing, and we have a very probably the most robust youth sports regional program in the country. We reach close to 50,000 participants a year just in our youth
wow,
soccer programs with
wow,
the Red Bulls. But then you also have, the World Cup is coming here, and the finals is going to be played, 12 miles down the road from us at MetLife Stadium, which is really exciting. And we're going to be part of the World Cup celebration and programming as probably teams are going to be training at our stadium at
hmm,
Sports Illustrated Stadium, as well as our new training facility that's going to open in September in Morris Township. Um, you have the greatest player in the world, potentially the greatest player ever, playing in Major League Soccer right now in Messi, which is really, really exciting, which is also bringing in other superstars, not only superstars that are on, later in their careers, but
hmm,
young stars are now starting to look at, the U.S., North America, Major League Soccer as a great opportunity for them to develop their careers. We have, we have just growth in this country, an excitement about soccer. It's growing 8 times faster than football and basketball, 4 times faster than baseball and hockey, through certain demos like younger demographics
yeah.
that are really taking on soccer as like one of their favorite sports now. So it's a really exciting time, and it's great that we're a part of it and we're part of that growth.
Why do you think it took so long for soccer to become as popular as it is here? I mean, around the world, soccer is, I guess you could
Yeah.
say, the sport, really, right? Why
Oh, yeah.
why do you think the U.S. was behind that trend?
I think that there prior to Major League Soccer, there were a lot of leagues that had varying degrees of success and challenges in growing the sport. I think what we found though too is as football has always been the NFL has always been the number one sport for a long time.
Sure.
Baseball obviously is the American pastime,
Hmm.
and then what you found in the '80s with NBA really taking shape with Bird and Magic and Michael Jordan, obviously. And then the NHL actually had its like real growth in the 90s. Soccer was always a little bit behind. I mean, you had those great years of those Cosmos in the late 70s, early 80s, where Pele and some of the great global stars were coming here, but they were coming at the tail end of their careers, right?
Mm.
And I think what Major League Soccer has done, they've done a really great job of growing the sport. They grew the league to now it's 30 teams. It was 23 teams when I started with Major League Soccer 11 years ago. So in fact, we added another team to this market and across the river as well during that time. And I just think that it's almost like all the arrows are pointing in the right direction right now.
Yeah.
Where soccer, especially with the World Cup coming back here, Major League Soccer was created off of the success of the last time the World Cup was here in '94. So now it's kind of like this bookending moment right now where, we've all had this 2026 circled on our calendars that
Mm.
like this is the year, the 2026 and 2025 even too. The Club World Cup's going to be here, but this is where we're really starting to take shape, and it's an exciting time. And I love part of what brought me back to working for a team and why I decided to work for the Red Bulls at this time was I wanted to work with a sport and with a property that was on the rise, where I felt like I can actually make an impact, or my teams can make an impact. That was exciting for me versus when I was at, an NBA team or when I was working with other leagues as well. You pretty much knew what you were going to get, there is some similarities to when I was at the Nets and they were kind of moving to Brooklyn. There was that excitement and the uncertainty and the
Sure.
difficulty there. And that's part of what drew me to working with soccer and with the New York Red Bulls here.
I've heard some people say that one of the reasons why it took a while for soccer to catch on here is because we tend to like our sports that have a lot of points, that there's a lot of scoring happening, and that isn't always the case in soccer. Do you think that's true?
So there's a couple of theories. There's that because it's running time, there's not enough
Mm.
commercial time. So
Oh,
broadcasters weren't really keen on playing it. All those things. I mean, there's probably some merit to some of those theories, but the reality is, if you come to a soccer match, and this was actually something that slapped me in the face the first time I went to a Red Bulls game after I started working there. Um, Going to a soccer match is completely different than anything else. It's it's 90 minutes running time. So yes, you don't have all these commercial breaks, these timeouts. You have that 15-minute halftime, but it's nonstop action. And yes, it might end up with a 0-0 tie, but it might be the most exciting like
yeah.
0-0 tie you've ever seen.
Yes.
And there's something special about the soccer culture. Um, I don't know if you've been to our stadium, but we have
I
to get
have.
you out there. You have? Okay, good. Well, yeah, I don't know if you remember, but there's this supporter culture that behind one of our goals, there's these official supporter groups that they're there with drums and instruments and they're chanting and singing and standing and dancing throughout the entire game. And it's kind of the closest thing you can say to it in U.S. sports is probably college sports.
Mm.
Going to a big college football game or a college basketball game. That's how it is at every MLS stadium, at every soccer game, every time. And I think the more that people are experiencing it, the more that people are starting to fall in love with it as well. And yeah, it's taken some time, but sometimes sometimes the right time is, I think, now for everybody to really get a chance to fully experience it. And with the World Cup, there's going to be more eyes to it, more people are going to be paying attention to it, and we're going to be bringing on more fans.
I know that some of the stuff that you do at the Red Bulls involves the youth programs, and I was reading about some of the stuff. You have the Youth Club Alliance Player Voucher Program, which is so
Mhm.
cool. You work with schools that reward students for good work. You get tickets to the game. You have the kicks for kids. Why is all of that so important? It makes you such a wonderful part of the community, both in your immediate area, but even just for the state. Why is that work important?
Our mission really is to develop, engage, and inspire the community through the sport of soccer, right? And for us, we want to make sure that, especially the communities that we are, whether it's Harrison, Newark, or even New York City, because we're New York Red Bulls and we feel like we span across the entire New York, New Jersey region. For us, like we want to be part of our community stories and we want them to be part of ours. And if it means that we're doing that through youth programs, where they're able to learn the sport of soccer and learn all those great values that you and I were talking about earlier, about those values of the game that teach them life
Yeah,
lessons to make them not only good soccer players, but good human beings. That's really important for us.
yeah,
Similarly, though, too, like the reality is we have a platform. And if we don't use that platform for good, then it's a waste. And we have the opportunity to our players. They want to be in the community. It's interesting. They'll come up with ideas of like, hey, I was at the fire station over here, and I feel like we should go make a visit, like to surprise them. We do something called 11 Days of Service every September, and it's around September 11th, and to commemorate the events the tragic events there. But we take 11 days where we'll get our partners involved. So some of our sponsors might have an initiative that's important to them locally in the community, and we'll bring our players to it. We'll bring our staff there. We'll make a day out of it. But for us, it's part of who we are, and you rarely get somebody from our staff or our player saying like, oh no, we got to go to we got to go visit these children at the school or at a hospital. Like they're fighting to be able to do it.
Listen, I've been a fan of the Red Bulls for quite some time, and I know firsthand that you guys do some incredible work both on the field, on the pitch, right? On the pitch, is that what it is? On the pitch?
Yeah, perfect.
I watched Ted Lasso, but then also in the community. So thank you so much for all that you're doing. We like to end each one of these conversations with the same questions. We call it 3 big little questions. Are you ready for them?
Sure.
All right, Joe. How do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
If you ask people around me, they'll say that I'm never in a bad mood. But
Okay, that's good. I actually have heard that about you.
but no, I mean, for me, it's I'll think about my kids, I'll think about my family, and
Yeah,
and think about why I'm doing things like what we just discussed, like
yeah.
why I'm in the business that I'm in.
Do your kids play soccer?
No,
Interesting.
they did,
Interesting.
they did, and they love the Red Bulls, and they do play soccer recreationally,
Yeah.
but yeah, they're playing a bunch of other sports. My daughter's into theater.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
That's life, Frank
Oh,
Sinatra.
oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And what's one of your favorite spots in New Jersey? I have a feeling I know what you're going to say.
I mean,
You can say it. It's
outside
okay.
of
It's
Sports
okay.
Illustrated Stadium, outside Sports Illustrated Stadium. Yeah, but can I say something else? No. I mean, uh, I love going to Rutgers. I love going to Rutgers as well too.
Perfect.
I love.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. And the website for people to get more information, get tickets, find out more about everything the Red Bulls have going on.
NewYorkRedBulls.com. We have our home opener March 1st. And we have, some great matchups this year. We have Miami coming into town. I talked about Messi in July, and we have our rivalry match versus NYCFC in September, and our MLS Cup rematch May 10th versus LA Galaxy. So, yeah.
Awesome, Joe Stetson. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Ivy, thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you. That'll do it for Big Little Stories this week. I'm Ivy Sharmitz. I'll talk to you next time.